Horror movies provide an escape for audiences and let them delve into the darker side. Seeing helpless victims being chopped to bits by a nearly unstoppable force is fun for many. And for most fans, horror stops at the theater, with them knowing that the blood is fake, the victims are still alive, and the killer is just a man in a costume. But for a small few, horror movies provide a blueprint for murder. The 1980s was the decade of slasher movies and monsters, and one of the most popular monsters to come out of that movie era was Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th franchise. In the movie, Jason was a vengeful monster brought back to life to kill the teens that allowed him to drown at summer camp. By 1988, there were 6 movies in the franchise that garnered a legion of fans. While the vast majority of fans appreciated these movies for what they were, gore fests with teenage premarital sex being the catalyst for their demise, there were some who took these movies to heart and related to them in a much darker way. In 1988, Greensfield, Massachusetts was an average town not much different than most small towns in America. It was also the home to 19-year-old grocery store clerk Mark Branch. Not much is known about his home life, and what little was known about his early life is quite disturbing. Former schoolmates said that Mark wrote obscene letters to female students, kept files on them, and made obscene phone calls. He even pulled a knife out on a girl. This led him to be put under psychiatric care for several years. The one fact that everyone knew about him was that his obsession with horror movies, and in particular, the Friday the 13th franchise. A clerk at the local video rental store, Video Expo 1, was quoted in saying, "He rented strictly gore, period. The gorier, the better." It was Mark's reputation that led him to cross paths with his victim, Sharon Gregory. Sharon Gregory was an 18-year-old psychology major at Greenfield Community College. While many were disgusted by Mark's love for horror, Sharon was fascinated, so much so that she wanted to do a psychological profile on him. It isn't known what was written in the profile, as no one has actually found it. However, we do know that the profile didn't sit well with Mark, and he wanted the paper back. On the night of October 24th, 1988, Mark wore a hockey mask, black boots, and broke into Sharon Gregory's home. At some point during the struggle, Sharon was able to run into the bathroom, but unfortunately, she wasn't able to escape her killer. Sharon's identical twin sister, Cheryl, found her sister's body later that evening in a bathtub. Sharon had been slashed and cut repeatedly in the head, chest, and abdomen. Police immediately set their focus on Mark Branch as their main suspect, and a massive manhunt ensued. During the search, his blood-stained car was found abandoned in the woods. For an entire week, the town of Greenfield was on edge, and rumors began flying that he'll be back to kill again on Halloween. The town had become so frightened that all of the scheduled Halloween activities were canceled. Even the local movie theater canceled the showing of the movie Halloween 4. While searching for Mark, the full extent of his obsession with horror was revealed when investigators searched Mark's home. They recovered 75 slasher films, 65 killer-related books, 3 knives, a machete, and 3 goalie masks. This led an investigator to say, "Thinks he's Jason." Halloween came and went peacefully in Greenfield, and there had been no development in the case until November of that year, when a hunter spotted Mark's decomposing body hanging from a tree. The coroner determined that Branch's death had been suicide and took place not long after Sharon Gregory's murder. It started with an innocent invitation, "Do you want to come to my house tonight?" and ended in murder. Alison Cambier was a 15-year-old girl from Drapeens, Belgium, and had her whole life ahead of her. She lived next door to 24-year-old truck driver Thierry Jaradin and struck up a friendship over their love of movies. In 2001, Alison accepted Thierry's invitation and went to his home where he lived with his 84-year-old grandmother. Alison went over to his home to exchange movies and to talk because his godfather died only a few days earlier. But Thierry had other intentions than just hanging out with a friend. That night, he decided to declare his love for the much younger girl and made sexual advances towards her. Alison, startled by Thierry's actions, immediately rejected him. Things were not going according to his plans, so Thierry excused himself to go to the bathroom. He didn't go to the bathroom to compose himself or let time alleviate this embarrassing moment because he had a plan B if he was rejected. A few days before, Thierry purchased a black tunic and Ghostface killer mask that was used in the movie Scream. He placed the costume along with 2 knives in the bathroom. Literally dressed to kill, Thierry snuck behind Allison, covered her mouth with his hand, and proceeded to stab her 30 times in her left side, slicing the girl open. Once he was sure that she was dead, he positioned her body neatly on his bed and slipped a rose into her hands to imitate the scene from Scream 3. After the murder, he called his father and co-worker to confess what he had done. Then he went to a friend's house where he called the police to alert them to his current location. When questioned by the police, he said that he had been motivated by the Scream franchise. He was charged and later convicted of murder and was sentenced to life in prison. After serving 15 years, Thierry petitioned the courts to be released on parole. At the time of writing this, we could not find further information about the current status of his parole request.
Parker County 911, where is your emergency?
My house.
The emergency?
I just killed my mom and my sister.
What?
I just killed my mom and my sister.
You just killed your mother and your sister? How did you do that?
Those chilling words were from 17-year-old Jacob Evans when he called 911 to confess his crime. On October 4th, 2012, the weather was getting cooler and neighbors were already putting up Halloween decorations in the small town of Aledo, Texas. This day was no different than any other day for the town, and especially for one resident, Jacob Evans. On that day, he ran errands for his grandmother, went to the allergist, and played golf in his backyard. From the outside, Jacob was a dutiful young man, but inside, his thoughts were consumed with killing his family, as it had been for days. Just a few days earlier, Jacob watched the Rob Zombie's remake of the classic horror movie Halloween 3 times to boost himself up to kill his family. Rob Zombie's take of the young Michael Myers was deadlier than the original because he kills not only his sister, but 3 others before he's sent away to Smith's Grove Sanitarium. In Jacob's confession, he said, "I was amazed at how at ease the boy was during the murders, and how little remorse he had afterward. I was thinking to myself, it will be the same for me when I kill someone." With thoughts of killing his 15-year-old sister Mallory filling his mind all day, he finally made his move. At 11:15 that night, Jacob went to Mallory's bedroom with a .22 revolver in hand and knocked on her door. When she opened the door, Mallory immediately knew something was wrong with her older brother and yelled at him that he was freaking her out. She turned away from him, and with her back facing him, Jacob shot Mallory once in the back and then once in the head. He then ran downstairs into the study where his mother was and shot her 3 times. Jacob ran into his room and screamed at the top of his lungs in shock of what he had done. In the midst of his celebration of finally killing someone of his family, Jacob heard a noise from his sister's room and discovered that Mallory was still alive. Jacob reloaded his gun, screamed that he was sorry, and shot her again. He then went back to his mother and shot her again to ensure that she was dead. Knowing his sister and mother were dead, Jacob made this chilling 911 call.
Okay, is there any reason that you were so angry at your mother and your sister?
I don't know. I wasn't. It's weird. I wasn't even really angry with them. It just kind of happened. I've been kind of planning on killing for a while now.
Even more terrifying is that Jacob originally planned on killing his grandparents who lived across the street and his 2 older sisters who were staying over there. His father had been out of town at the time. According to Jacob's confession, his motivation for the murder was that he felt that his family was becoming racist bullies. In the confession, he stated, "The people who are racist bullies and who are full of themselves are the really evil ones. And it amazes me because those 3 qualities are extremely common today." Jacob had been ordered to a state mental hospital after it was ruled that he was incompetent to stand trial. After being committed for 2.5 years, he was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to 45 years in prison with the possibility of parole. Thank you for watching the Twin Files. Please remember to like and subscribe these videos. We promise we'll bring you more. Have a spooky Halloween.